Steve, good morning.
Good morning, Ray. I think in a different lifetime, you were born to be like Murray the K. I think your music selection for bumpers is the best in radio. I think that in another lifetime, I could see you being a music DJ, ruling over like Chicago or New York City or something in the Beatles era.
Oh, I would have loved that. I had stacks of wax and miles of smiles, baby.
There you go.
How are you?
Well, I'm doing fantastic. I'm enjoying watching the Democrats self-immolate over the question of whether or not Maine politicians should put Maine first or Somalia first. This seems like a real basic test, and the Democrats are failing it over and over and over again with zeal.
Boy, I'll tell you, I don't know what's happened to Shenna. I've known Shenna for almost 25 years. I've always liked her, and she's always been the same person until she removed Trump from the ballot. I think she got so much national notoriety from doing that from the far left that it went to her head. I mean, her calling out Bobby Charles and saying he's full of hate because Bobby says if you're elected in Maine, you should be for Maine and America, not Somalia. That's not hate. That's common sense. That's
Well, yeah. Like the playbook's obvious here. They have every single person running for governor on the Democratic side is in some form or fashion associated with the Mills administration, which makes them culpable for what's happened under the Mills administration. And if you ask them what got better in Maine over the last 8 years, we'll talk about any sphere of society you want, education, the economy, infrastructure, jobs, inequality, the racial divide, drug addiction, the hospitals, any single sphere you want to talk about, what got better under Governor Janet Mills and how and why. But they can't talk about that because nothing got better, nothing whatsoever. And they don't have any Republicans to blame because they had the trifecta. They had complete control. Maine had an 8-year-long experiment in total progressive reign, and what we've seen are the results of that experiment, which are poverty and misery. And they don't want to talk about that. All they have in their toolbox is you're a racist, you're a transphobe, you're a bigot, you're full of hate. They don't have anything else. So this is what they're talking about. Unfortunately for them, they've picked unwise territory to tangle with Bobby Charles or anyone on the right because Representative DeLocke, in addition to having a long and lengthy track record of commenting publicly about how she puts Somalia first and her number one priority is rebuilding Somalia, she has also been employed by Gateway Community Services, which is a nonprofit migrant services, a MaineCare business that bills about $5 million a year, which has been credibly accused on the record by a former employee who handled their MaineCare billing of fraudulently billing MaineCare. And I know for a fact that Attorney General Aaron Frey has declined to investigate, and he's done so for political reasons because this is a politically protected group that helps Democrats during elections. Gateway Community Services will only be investigated when President Trump appoints a U.S. attorney who can take over the District of Maine and investigate on behalf of the Department of Justice. But this is a Somali-run nonprofit where DECA was the assistant executive director under Abdullahi Ali, who ran for president in Jubaland, Somalia last year, admitted in Kenyan media to using funds he obtained in America to buy arms, munitions, and pay militiamen as part of that election, so quote-unquote election. There is no question that the Republicans who are questioning the priorities of Representative DeLocke are in the right. The people of Maine, I think, share a suspicion of anyone who says that Somalia is their first priority. And if Democrats want to have a conversation about Representative DeLocke, I think it leads inevitably to questions about Gateway Community Services and the credible allegations of fraud that have been leveled against that company.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I cannot believe that Aaron Frey won't even take a look at this, but this is how they treat voter fraud in Maine. Steve, you know this. Somebody says, well, we're concerned about this. They don't even look into it. They're just like, oh, there's no voter fraud here. You know, you're fear-mongering and what have you. what do we have? Somewhere between 700 and 800,000 people that vote in the big elections in the state. Statistically, it's impossible that we would have no one doing something nefarious, because people do nefarious things in all walks of life, but somehow or another, because they want to protect what they're doing. I don't know why Aaron Fry won't look into this, but he is as useless as tits on a boar hog. I've never seen anything like it in my life. I mean, feckless, it's unfair to the word feckless to describe him that way. He should be looking out for Maine. That's his job. That's his obligation. But he is just a Mills butt monkey.
Well, Aaron Fry is looking out for Aaron Fry. Shenna Bellows is looking out for Shenna Bellows. You said earlier you think that Shenna Bellows has changed. I don't think she has. Her priority has always been looking out for number one. And that's the same with Aaron Fry. He's using the office of the Attorney General not according to an oath or some philosophy of administering justice or enforcing laws, but according to what's best for his career advancement. He thinks someday that he's going to be, the congressman from Maine's 2nd Congressional District, because people will fondly remember the amicus briefs he filed against ExxonMobil or in defense of child mutilation in West Virginia. He really thinks that. And so that's the lens that once you understand that these people are all operating under what they perceive as their self-interest, things start to make a lot more sense. But they have succeeded, I think, over the last 8 years in turning radical this idea that Maine politicians should be first and foremost concerned with Maine. To them, that is a radical far-right idea that Maine's representatives, senators, and governors should look out for Maine first. But it's not a radical idea. It's in fact the basis of self-government. I think Somali politicians should look out for Somalia. Politicians from Norway should look out for Norway. That's how elected self-representative government should work. But to them, that's a radical idea, and what they believe is that the government of Maine should in fact be a vehicle for other social engineering projects. Like the government of Maine should be used to fight global racism or global poverty or global climate change. But we can't even, get the road from Fort Ghent to Allagash repaved, right? How are we gonna take care of climate change when we can barely administer, an unemployment insurance system? The government of Maine can't even take care of its schools and infrastructure. We're dead last in both categories. We can't even get our electricity prices in the middle of the pack in terms of increases, despite sky-high tax rates and all kinds of different energy projects and 10 different full-time staffers in the governor's office devoted to energy. We still have, or perhaps that's because we have, exploding energy prices. So why do we have such grand ambitions? Maybe we could start with getting the road from Fort Kent to Allagash paved, and then we can talk about solving global climate change and healing every evil in the world.
Yeah, I'm with you. This is so ridiculous. The old saying, physician, heal thyself. I mean, if Janet Mills wants to go and advocate for climate change, she should have gotten a job with the UN and been as useless down there she's been as governor. The reason I said I believe Shenna's changed is I knew her back when she headed up the Maine ACLU, and she was pretty decent on some of the issues. She used to come in and we would talk about them. For example, she was big on gun rights back in the day. I don't know where she stands on that now, but she was always a humble person. She's not that person anymore. She told Bobby Charles that he's full of hate because the representative from South Portland has said, I'm Somalia first. No different than the gal from Illinois said in Mexico City over the weekend, I'm a Guatemalan first. I mean, that's not the way it's supposed to be. I'll tell you right now, I've thought a lot about it. If I could figure out how to do it now, I would, but I'm an old guy. But if I were in my 50s or late 40s, I would put on a national movement to amend the Constitution that you have to be born in America in order to serve in public office, because this is going to lead to our destruction. You got Halan Homar in Minnesota speaking to Somalis saying, I was a little girl taken from Somalia and I long to be back there and I'm here for Somalia. I mean, this isn't what our founders intended. Hell, it's not what anybody who has a red, white, and blue heart intends.
I mean, it's already in the naturalization oath that you're supposed to prioritize America and forsake all other principalities. It's already a long-established principle that once you become a naturalized American citizen, you put America first. I'm under no illusions that the naturalization oath is about to be enforced anytime soon. But again, the positions that Bobby Charles or any Republican is expressing are not radical. These are mainstream. These are totally moderate, common sense positions. The radical positions are the ones that every single Democratic candidate for governor right now is parroting, and I think it will cost them electorally to anchor themselves to an unpopular politician like Deca DeLocke. And here's the other thing. None of these politicians have spent much time going to migrant churches or actually talking to members of the Somali community, the Angolan or Congolese community. They've only gone to the gatekeepers like DECA. And the community members don't really like the elected officials who purport to be the ambassadors of the whole migrant community. The top of that list is Representative DeLocke. They don't like that she is, getting wealthy as she purports to be the key to all, support from the entire migrant community. And they're not on board with the radical LGBTQ stuff that they're pushing in schools. However, they're afraid of speaking out about it because they're worried about the political retribution from Representative DeLocke and her friends in the Mills administration. They see, Representative DeLocke is able to create the Office of New Americans and appoint an anti-Armenian guy, Tarlan Amadov, at the head of it. And they say, wow, she's pretty powerful. She was able to pick her friend who really, really hates Armenians and put him in charge of this big government agency. We don't want to cross her. Who knows what she might be able to do from her position in government. And so they stay silent and they don't speak out. But if they felt safe and you were able to ask them, they probably align more closely with conservatives and with the Republican Party. That's why I posted on Facebook last night that let's print up a couple thousand copies of Genderqueer, the book that Ryan Fecteau and Matt Moonen want in every single elementary school. But let's have it translated into Somali and Lingala and Portuguese, French, Arabic, and let's distribute that throughout the migrant community, along with a little letter that says this is a book that all the Democrats want in elementary schools. So just understand that when you side with Representative DeLocke and the Democrats, this is what you're getting. Your children are being force-fed this kind of material at elementary schools because they think that this is right and prudent and just.
Now, you would just,
crazy.
If we did that, we'd be arrested for distributing pornography to minors or something.
Well, that's true. That's the irony of it. You'd have to use the educational exemption that the schools use. But that's exactly right. If you were handing out those books on a street corner, you would be arrested for disseminating obscene material. Jim Libby, who's also running for governor, tried to repeal that exemption for the schools, and the Democrats fought tooth and nail to prevent it from being repealed because they know that what they're disseminating is pornography to kids, which just kind of pulls back the veil on the evil. They know that they're distributing pornography to kids. And they're fighting for their right to be able to do it at taxpayer expense, by the way.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right about this, Steve. It's just, it has become really a cesspool of pornography and overtaxation and overregulation. I mean, this is really an evil effort on their part, and I don't care who disagrees with me, who turns away from me. I believe this is evil, what they're doing here. They're dumbing down our kids by social indoctrination instead of opening their minds to possibility with proper education. And they're killing our economy here. I don't know, I try to figure out logically what their end game is. I can only assume that they think because Maine is so pristine, we'll have hotel owners, restaurant owners, and people with cleaning services, and everybody else get the hell out so their rich friends can playground here. That's the only thing I can come up with. Because why you would do this, some of these people, not only were they born here, but they have families who have been here for generations, and they are trying to destroy what has made this place special. I've never seen anything like it in my life. As you know, I think I got the video from you, or I got it from YouTube or somewhere. One of the people that work in the office of of New Americans says, come here, but don't assimilate, don't learn a language, don't do anything, praise your country.
Eklas Ahmed. Eklas Ahmed is the only employee of the Office of New Americans currently because Tarlan Ahmadov was forced to resign over his anti-Armenian bigotry. Hannah Pingree directly, another candidate for governor, who has also condemned Bobby Charles as a racist. Hannah Pingree picked Tarlan Ahmadov, an actual racist who has said anti-Armenian things all over the internet and has tried to get the government of Portland to introduce anti-Armenian resolutions and was forced out of that position because of his anti-Armenian expressions and his ethnic hatred. She picked him to run that organization started by Decca Delac. That's the irony of this all, is you have people who have actually created a race-based, racist institution and put someone who has expressed ethnic-based hatred in charge of it, accusing Bobby Charles of being racist. That's the irony of it, right?
Yeah, it's just nuts. I mean, I don't know Bobby that well, but I've spent some time talking with him over the last probably 6 to 8 months. Bobby Charles is not a racist. Bobby Charles wants what's best for Maine. He wants what's best for the country. It's why he spent his life serving the country. He's a good man, but that's all these people have. I mean, what are you going to say if you're Hannah or Shenna or Troy? I was there along with Governor Mills. We wrecked the damn place. We took education from 32nd to dead last. Our economy is languishing. We're in 45th place. Our incomes are in 46th place. Our taxes are second highest. Our healthcare costs are raging in the state. People can't even afford it. And our infrastructure, for the third time in 4 years, CNBC says, is dead last. Is that what you're going to say? No, you're going to distract people because Bobby Charles says we ought to have people in the Maine legislature advocating for Maine, not advocating for Somalia. I say, if Somalia's so damn great, why did you leave?
Well, two things I would say. First, the only thing really that's gotten better in the state of Maine is overdoses are more survivable thanks to the broad distribution of Narcan, which, if you're trying to help the Dominican organization selling fentanyl, you've done a great job because you're keeping their best customers alive. So you're helping maintain profits for the fentanyl cartels up here. But also the idea that Somalia is even a country, I think, is flawed. Somalia is at best a failed state. You're dealing with a region in Africa that's comprised of just a jumble of semi-autonomous states, and then there's a central government in Mogadishu, and they all operate according to their own sets of rules. And the only real rule there is whoever has the most guns and the most effective military is in charge and sets the rules. So it's just a region of basically anarchy and militarism. It's not some idyllic place where there's peaceful native wisdom that everyone aspires to go visit. And the other thing is, I was in Lewiston last week, going around and looking at some parts of the city because we got a full request showing all of the shootings and overdoses over the last 6 years in the city of Lewiston. It's stuff that would blow your mind if you'd been living in Lewiston 20, 25 years ago. And I was walking around some of these areas where there's been, a dozen, 24 shootings, and it's third world. I mean, it's in decline, and it's not totally the result of, like Somali individuals living there, but it's a result of policy decisions, certainly, that have been made by Democrats to try to transform that city into some experiment in multiculturalism. And one of the things that I was really struck by is, the Democrats will always argue, well, Maine and Lewiston area, it's always been a city of migrants. But going back to when the French Catholics from Canada came down, there was a famine going on, so they all came down into Maine, and the natives who were in Maine didn't like them at the time, but, they built Lewiston. And that's true. But I was standing there in front of the grand Catholic basilica that those French migrants built, that they built, within decades of arriving in Lewiston. And what's the comparable piece of durable, beautiful architecture and social and cultural contribution that the Somali diaspora has contributed? I mean, there's lots of Western unions popping up so that they can wire remittances back to Somalia, but there doesn't seem to be any willingness to contribute to, enduring Maine culture. And in the same way that you had the French migrants building, beautiful Catholic churches and businesses and mills. So it seems like there's two different sets of migration to Lewiston, and that they're not comparable. And so to make the argument that Maine and the Lewiston area, have always been built by migrants, it might be true, and it might pass like the basic smell test. But if you think about it for a quick second, the nature and character of those waves of migration were very different and had very different results for the city. There were there's nobody in the French Canadian population who came down here who was wiring money back to France or back to Canada, or saying, France is first in my heart, Canada is first in my heart. And, I thought about it also, if we had some guy from Vermont come here and take up refuge in Maine and start, running for office and becoming the, famous statewide, and he was out here saying, well, Vermont's my number one priority, and I'm trying to help Vermont, and I'm using you people in Maine and your tax dollars and your elected positions and your NGOs to help Vermont, everybody would say, hey, screw you, buddy.
Right. Well, I used that example this morning. As you know, I'm from Florida. And what if I had run for governor, because I thought about it, and got elected, which probably wouldn't have happened, but it might have. And then I said, look, my heart's in Florida, and we're gonna focus a lot of Maine on Florida. I'd be shot in the street. I would. They would run me out of here if they didn't kill me. Nobody would put up with that. But some broad comes here from Somalia, and she's ungrateful as hell for being here, and that's obvious in her attitude. And then her heart's with Somalia, and what she wants to do is advocate for Somalia. They all think that's enlightened. It's not enlightened. It's destructive. You brought up the contrast between the French Canadians and the Somalians. The French Canadians came here and built a life based on the Maine way of life. But as the Washington Post, certainly not a radical right-wing publication, points out, they refer to Lewiston, Maine as Little Mogadishu now. They took the hellhole they were in and they brought it here and recreated it. That's not embracing Maine, the Maine way of life, or being proud you're from Maine. You just took your terrible society and dumped it on our soil. It's a change of geography. It's not a change for a better life. They didn't come here to build a better life. If they did, why are they recreating the life they fled from?
I think that, a lot of credit goes to Bobby Charles for being willing to speak candidly about this. He'll take some slings and arrows, but I think that in the end, it's going to help popularize his campaign and his message, because I think that the left has been successful for 8 years in trying to shame people into silence and into leaving political life for holding very mainstream views like Maine politicians should put Maine first. And they've screamed at people and been screechy online, and their pink-haired people on Reddit have been leaving negative reviews for advertisers or for businesses, and that's worked for a little bit. And COVID, I think, enhanced that, put it on steroids, and so it caused good people who would otherwise be involved in politics, running for office, or at the very least speaking out, speaking their minds, and speaking honestly, it caused them to self-censor and withdraw from the public sphere. And we've seen the results of that. We've seen accelerated decline, accelerated progressive decline. And so now I think that we've broken through that. And it's gotten to the point where things are so bad in Maine that most people I talk with, most business owners who were self-censoring, are no longer willing to do that. They know that Maine has reached a point where it's 2026 is going to be, are we going to, bounce off rock bottom and turn a corner, have a recovery, take the state in a new direction, choose a new path for the state of Maine, or are we past the event horizon where Maine is going to just, eventually become one big conservation park dotted with refugee camps and a coastline for liberal, wealthy elite to live and enjoy Maine's coast. That's the vision that the left has.
Yeah.
And I think that the people of Maine will reject that in 2026.
I think they are rejecting it. As you know, we have formed a group called Common Sense for Maine. It is growing exponentially right now. We have our first commercial out on social media. It's going to be on regular television right after Labor Day. People are looking at it. We've already had 100,000 hits on it in just about a week. We're out standing up for the things that I believe most of Maine, we're working hard on those 80-20 issues that most of Maine, regardless of political stripe, believes in. And look, I have no problem with anybody coming to America. I love it when they do. By the grace of God, I was born here. It's nothing for me to brag about. I had nothing to do with it. But when you come here, be a part of us. Learn our ways. Live the big dreams. Dream big dreams. Live the big dreams. That's what America's always been about. And that's not what's happening here. And I just... These people are so damn destructive, and they're, they all have one thing in common. You know what it is? They're all white, progressive women, and they're just destructive human beings. And part of what led me to want to run for governor was not even if I won, but just to be on a debate stage and stand up to them with facts that they don't want to admit, because if they admit it, then they know they get booed off the stage like Janet did at the moose permit thing. Steve, I got to let you go, but I got to ask you one more question here, because I've been talking about it a lot over the last couple of days, and I saw it on your website. Maddie Daughtry, the Senate president, is walking in some town with a dog, I guess to humanize her, talking about the concerns she's hearing over taxation, and she is so thrilled there's a legislative task force. I say, correct me if I'm wrong, I say, Maddie, you're the Senate president. You shepherded these tax increases through. Just don't advocate them for them and don't vote for them, Maddie, and we won't have tax increases. What say you, Steve Robinson?
Well, first of all, I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. This is insane. It's like, O.J. Simpson standing over a bunch of dead bodies saying, who did this? Who killed these people? I mean, they're lying through their teeth. But, we reported a couple of days ago that Maddie's business, Moderation Brewing, was the recipient of a $500,000 taxpayer-funded grant during the middle of COVID. It was one of the Thrive Maine grants. $500,000 to her 3-person beer company. I wonder how that happened. FAME, the government agency that approved that grant to her business, won't tell us the names of 2 individuals who aren't government employees who approved that grant to her business. So I think she's happy with high tax rates because she's benefiting personally from them.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. Steve, we appreciate you. We appreciate Jeff Preble for sponsoring this segment. Keep doing what you're doing. You're growing from greatness into legendary status with the work you're doing. The whole time you're on, everybody is saying, I learn more in the half hour Steve Robinson's on than I do from all the rest of the media in the state of Maine every week. So thank you for being here and doing what you're doing, and just keep going forward.
Well, I appreciate that, Ray. You should tell the gubernatorial candidates that they should read about Deca DeLocke and Gateway Community Services on the Robinson Report, because that's the stuff they need to be talking about and dragging the media's attention to. Because if you start digging into MaineCare fraud committed by some of these migrant NGOs and their affiliated businesses, people's minds are going to be blown at the scale of criminality occurring here in Maine.
Yeah, and credit to Bobby Charles. He's running for governor. Credit to Bobby Charles for standing up and speaking truth and being willing to take the shots that he knew were coming at him. Credit to Bobby Charles for that. Yes,
100%. Thanks for having me this morning, Ray.
We got to run. Steve Robinson from the Maine Wire. Find out more at themainewire.com.